This is the last of the 3 videos under battle. In the previous video, we covered getting battle ready and how it is we need to fight. In this video, we cover where it is we are to fight and gain a better understanding of each of these great battlegrounds. Let's dive in. Know where you're fighting. Who you fight and how you fight only makes sense if you know where you're fighting. Knowing your battlegrounds is a critical part to conquering your enemies. Battleground number 1, yourself. Also known as your soul, sinful, or fallen man. This is your fleshy self, body and soul, that wages war with God and your born-again spirit man. Battleground number 2, your home. Who we are in the privacy of our own homes and in front of our wives and kids is the real us. So let's get real. Battleground 3, your church. This comprises your discipleship group and Sunday fellowship and activities. If you're still making church about membership and mortar, you really must stop that. Battleground 4, your work. Remember, work is a blessing, but has also been cursed. Managing both aspects well is a critical part of being a disciple of Christ. Battleground 5, your Sabbath. The word speaks about a Sabbath rest entered into by faith. This is not about law keeping, it's about resting in God's work and from our own by faith. Battleground 6, your suburb. Loving our neighbor is central to our faith. And yet how often do we not even know the people who live right next door to us? This must not be. And finally, battleground number 7, your city. Throughout the centuries, true Christians were always known for their love and care for the suffering and marginalized of the city. This must certainly be. So now that we're done with the theory, let's put some rubber on the road. In saying so, let's see where all of this fits together into our battle plan checkup sheet. Self, as highlighted by the yellow block here, is our first and most important battleground and relates to the first 4 elements or building blocks of our spiritual home, being 1, the D group, that is joining and leading a discipleship group, 2, the devil or going for a sozo, 3, the flesh, that is conquering your fleshy man and becoming a spiritual man, and 4, getting spiritually trained, that is practicing the spiritual disciplines. Just a side note that all the numbers in the Call to Conquer battle plan checkup correspond or represent that element in Call to Conquer's spiritual home blueprints. Accordingly, please refer to your Call to Conquer discipleship assessment report to obtain more info or resources in this regard. The next battleground, being the home, is the first of the remaining 6 public battlegrounds and constitutes being a husband, father, and family and friends. As we learnt in the previous video, how we fight in these public battlegrounds is key and requires that we are both spiritually resourced and spiritually armed, which is how we evaluate our standing or ability to conquer in each of the 6 public battlegrounds. Or to use home as an example, how's my knowledge, time, money and talent being invested in these 3 aspects of my home? And how my gifts, service, prayers and testimonies being used as a weapon to grow into and advance God's kingdom in these 3 aspects of my home? Do you notice how suddenly something as familiar as home takes on an entirely different and more powerful spiritual dimension? That is, when broken down into its core areas of godly responsibility and then viewed through a spiritual resources and spiritual weapons lens, home constitutes a 24 block or point evaluation. Of course, it would be impossible to focus on all 24 aspects of home at once, and so instead it is advisable to pick one area of responsibility first, for example husband, and then make that the focus or examination point within a spiritual resources and weapons perspective. And the same question also applies to church, being my discipleship and Sunday groups, to work, to Sabbath and how I rest, to suburb and my neighbors, and lastly, to city and the needs therein. Which brings us to the end of battlegrounds, and time to bring it all together with the Call to Conquer battle plan checkup sheet or tool, and how we apply it. As you can see, the top half constitutes the personal or self BBB checkup, covering belong, build, and personal battlegrounds. The bottom half constitutes a combination of the 6 public battlegrounds and their associated components, each of which are evaluated according to the spiritual resources and weapons God has entrusted to each of us. For example, and as highlighted here, whether you're a father at home or busy at work, you've been called to conquer in both domains by applying the spiritual resources and weapons at your disposal. Equally, and as highlighted here, for example, with time and service, they are to be considered and applied across all public battlegrounds, and not simply those we can remember or those that come naturally to us. On the contrary, the public battleground checkup includes 72 different battleground, spiritual resource, and spiritual weapon combinations for you and I to examine, understand, grow, and mature in. And in this way, to go to spiritual war and answer the Lord's call to conquer. That is, by being able to fight like a spiritual man. And that brings us to the end of our third and final battle video, as well as the end of all our battle plan videos in the War Room series. Our goal in this regard has been to practically equip you for spiritual war. However, it is only what you actually do with this information that will bring about the desired transformation. If you have any questions or concerns in this regard, please don't hesitate to contact us. But for now, it's goodbye, mighty man, and God bless you in your discipleship journey. Be strong and of good courage, or as our Jewish forefathers would have said, Rak Kasak.